Well, hello there.
Hey, Boyd. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, good
Uh,
afternoon.
this is Jim and Boyd at the Entrepreneur Factory weekly training program. This week we have kind of an abbreviated version. It's going to be on finding your perfect customer. So, Boyd, talk to us a little tiny bit about that.
Well, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk. Let me get to the slide here. So I taught a class just recently. It was a master class called Mastering Your Social Media. And so we're going to use a little bit of that to go through and talk a lot more about it. So, and that's what it is. So one of the things that we found was if you want to talk to prospects, you have to understand who your current customers are and utilize them to find out more how to attract others. So understand your current customers is what we're going to start with. And then we'll go on, and there'll be several things you want to understand about your current customers. But, so many people, they have, hundreds of customers, and they're always looking for new people to bring into their showroom or whatever they're going to be doing. And the key is sometimes you want to get that same customer back, but also you want to know what brought them to you in the first place so that you can invite others for that very same reason. So we're going to get in and talk about that. And Jim and I are going to take turns on this, so not to worry. It won't be just me talking. So how well do you know your customer? This is one of the big things that we always ask customers is some of our clients is how well do you know your customers? And I do hope you know them well, but you may not. You may be a retail business that has lots of people going through and you just don't get a chance to even remember them, let alone know their name or anything like that. But many customers do. Now, McDonald's, I have a picture here with Ronald McDonald and this guy with his picture there. I use this because Ronald or the McDonald's Corporation knows their customers really, really well. And they've done a lot of surveying. They've done a lot of things. In fact, one time I was at a restaurant when they had a person that was just going from table to table and asking if they would do a survey for her about McDonald's. And in that, they were finding out what brought you there and a bunch of other things. We're going to go into that today and talk about what, a lot of those things. But McDonald's understands their customer. In fact, up until when they had the market crash in 2007, 2008 through 2012, McDonald's knew exactly who they needed to go to get everything to stay going. And and their perfect customer was, and they told me this because I was working with one of the people who owns quite a few of the franchises in the Salt Lake area. And he says they know that she's 35 years old. She has 2.5 kids. The kids are generally between 6 and 10, and that she is a busy mom and sometimes has a job, but most of the time she doesn't.
Is she single?
No, she's married and lives in a home. They have 2 cars in their family. Oh, he went on for a few minutes to tell me exactly where they lived and all the things about that person. And they have some college. They got married when they were about 25 to 30. And, he just kept telling me about these things. And I'm going, wow, that's pretty cool. So they know their customer very well. Now, sometimes when they introduce new products, they are targeting a different audience. And they have figured out what audience that is. And in fact, if you ever see when they bring out their McRib sandwich, notice how it is a different feel to it than their normal McDonald's things. Now, the normal McDonald's things also talks about the kids' meal because mom likes those kids' meals too, because she can just get something quick and easy for them. And, they changed the meals so that they had apples instead of French fries, and you could get, some instead of just milk or chocolate milk, you had options of juices and things. So those all came from talking to mothers that were their perfect customer. And so, but when they do the McRib, who do you think is the Jim? Who do you think is the perfect person for the McRib?
I'm gonna guess a guy that is 20 years old.
Well, you're close. They said that it's usually a guy that is about 38.
Oh,
And they've got a bunch of different things on it, and depending on what part of the country is how they're going to word that ad, because they find that in some areas they want to appeal to the more cowboy person. In other areas they want the upscale person. So it just really depends on where you're at.
really? An upscale.
Yeah, if you're in Seattle or Portland or San Francisco, a lot of the West Coast, or even some in like Boston and other areas, New York, it's an upscale type thing. But in other areas, like when they go to Georgia or they're in Florida, they're in, it was funny how he was saying it was, I would not have guessed that was much more country. But he says it's not that it's much more country, but you talk that way to the people in that area. So Texas is big for it. Utah, actually, they talk more country, but yet the West Coast, they talk more upscale. And so it was interesting that they have two different demographics that they're targeting for that sandwich. And, in each of these sandwiches, they did some that were the International Fair sandwiches, and they were there for about 3 months, I think. And they were targeted differently as well. In fact, the International Fair was targeted to couples that were 45 and above. Okay.
Really?
Yeah. So because they say that those people, they've traveled and they've gone to, and because they had an Italian sandwich, they had a German sandwich, they had a French sandwich, they had in some other areas, and they said the people that are in that 45 to 70, 45 to 65 range is who they really want for that sandwich, because they want that taste of going to that place.
Really?
And so it was interesting to find out how they do that and how everything changes. But anyway, you need to know who your customer is, so you'll know
Just
how to
about
speak.
to ask, we need to talk about how our customers find out who their perfect customer is.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to do. So, okay, so you've talked to these people before and you've helped them out, and so you want to hopefully have made friends with many of them, and you want to keep these customers for life. So why did they choose to come to you over others to solve their problem? What set you apart? That's the first type of thing you want to do. And I was giving this presentation about the mastering your social media to a group of people, and we had 75 people in this room, and I asked them that question. And a lot of the people said it's because I have a lower price. And I said, I'll bet if you go and ask your customers, there will be a few that'll say that, but I'll bet they're not all. In fact, I'll bet more than 50% will say there's something else that you're doing that brought them to you rather than just price. And because I've asked customers this. I used to train with the Entrepreneur Factory, and so did you, Jim. So one of the things that I found was when I sent people out to ask their customers this. Now, of course, if they hadn't started their business, this doesn't apply. But for people who are in business, you go ask your customers, what did they decide? Why did they decide you were better than somebody else? And it's interesting. As I sent these people out to do that, they come back and they'd have these, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And, one of them was that he had built a good following and people felt like he was the expert. And he was going, I didn't realize I had that. And others were saying that, well, they feel like a legitimate company, unlike their competitors. So it's how they spoke to their customers in many ways. It's what they said and how they said it and how they said it often. And then there was some that just did it because they had a unique value proposition.
You know,
And that,
that's interesting. Um, Many years ago when I worked with both SCORE and ELP, it was kind of impressed upon me that business was a three-legged stool, and you could provide either price, service, or quality. You could only provide any two of those things, not the whole gamut. And so a lot of businesses, like conventional business, a brick and mortar printing business, like you had, to some degree, was price and maybe service, um, and maybe not the highest quality print type of scenario. But today, I think that business has changed. And I think you have to provide all three of those if you're going to do business in the internet economy.
well, you don't always have to be the lowest price either, because there are some people who think, well, the lowest price person has to be cutting corners somewhere to be lower than the other guys.
Mhm.
And you want to be that person that's maybe in the middle ground. You don't want to be the highest price one unless you're going after only the high level businesses or people that to buy from you. And there are some businesses that do that. But you're right. You do need to try to have a good mix between those. You've got to have the expertise that will help you have the quality. You have to have the right product and such. But one of the funniest ones was I sent a guy out and asked him to check with his customers, and the customers said, well, we liked your ad better than somebody else's ad. And he said, well, why? Well, you didn't put any platitudes in there. You actually told me these are the benefits that I'm going to get. And that's it. That was the whole reason that some of those people were choosing him over anyone else. I mean, I don't know how many people do this. I mean, I taught against this when I ran the community newspapers, and it was putting the platitudes in business since 1962. We aim to serve everybody the best that we can. Well, I hope so. If you can say I hope so to any of these, they're platitudes. They're what everybody else is saying as well. We have certified ASE mechanics. Well, yeah, every shop better have ASE certified mechanics,
Right.
because, that's the standard. But you got to go beyond that, and you've got to tell them why. And I'll tell a story that goes along with this. I was working, when I worked with the newspaper, we did a thing called the Business Spotlight. And we were going to be highlighting this dentist that was in South Jordan. And my writer calls me and she says, hey, Boyd, this guy just is saying he's just like everybody else. He has no unique value proposition. And I says, oh, no, I know he's got to have one, because, he's grabbing more business than his competitors are right now. So I set an appointment, went in to talk to him. And as I'm talking to him, I say, well, so what's your unique value proposition? What is it that sets you apart? Oh, we do teeth. We do cleanings. We do x-rays. We can do all these different things. And I'm going, there has to be something that's different. Well, just then, his receptionist walks in and says, hey, doctor, your last appointment, which is in a half an hour, just called and said he's in Ogden and not going to make it. And but his tooth is really killing him. He wants to know if when he gets to town, he can call you and he can come in at that time. And he says, oh, sure, let's do that. Well, so I started asking him about that. I said, do you do that with everybody? He says, oh, yes. I treat every customer, every one of my clients, like they were my father or my mother or my brother or sister. If they have a problem, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take care of them. That was his unique value proposition.
Mhm.
And we put that out in the article and he got more business. So you've got to find out what your unique value proposition is. And your customers will be able to give you a clue to that, Maybe it's
So
you're always on time or whatever it might be.
I recently gave a presentation to a group of artists, and what we spoke about at length is knowing their unique value proposition and knowing their clients. And many of them were really confused when I said, look, your client is going to dictate your product and service and even your delivery method. And that's really accurate in the sense that if you ask your clients, they're going to tell you everything that's cool about you. You should take a survey, and I'm sure you've got some ideas on how to do that. Let the client dictate your service, your quality, your even your price to a large extent, what you sell. And that's really going to be a benefit to you in the long run. Understand how your client sees you.
Yeah, that's true. So these are things that you need to pay attention to. And when talking to your customer will help you figure out what that unique value proposition is. And then once you know that, that will help you write that better. And from a unique value proposition, then you can write the unique sales proposition, which is similar, but not yet the same. You're knowing what makes you unique is your unique value proposition. But telling people what that means to them is your sales proposition, unique sales proposition. So those are two important things that you got to know and got to go after. So, okay. The next thing I want to kind of do is, when you're talking to customers, and I do social media, Jim, do websites and SEO. One of the things you got to understand is, where do your customers hang out online? And I'm looking at it from a social respect, because that's where they hang out more. But where does it take them? Where do you want customers to go when they are working with you on social media is one of the big things. So first off, you got to know where they hang out online. And it's not always where you think they are, or where you think they are may not always be the exact place that they pay attention to business things. So, and I have a customer that's an HVAC company. Back in May, we did a survey, or we had him do a survey of his clients. And what we found was 73% of his clients hang out on Facebook at least once a week. And 65% of them of the total, were online every day. Well, what we also found out was they pay very little attention to his type of business on Facebook when they see ads. They instead looked at ads for his type of business more when they were on Instagram. In fact, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube were ahead of Facebook for HVAC companies. And it changed how we marketed his business because of that. So that's something you need to know is, what's the things your customers are doing? Where are they hanging out? And are they paying attention? Although we found that if they're a restaurant or a nail salon or hair salon, or even a mortgage company, anything that is ultra personal, people will pay attention to on Facebook more than a lot of the others. So, but the other side of that is when it's not that ultra personal, then they pay attention on other mediums first. Because when they're hanging out on Facebook, they're hanging out to see what their friends and family are doing. They're not there to look for business.
Boyd, do you know, can you give us a quick rundown of the demographic of each of the social media platforms, and then maybe a quick story on somebody that was completely surprised about their demographic, or where they actually fell in the model?
Yes, I can do that. So I usually work with the top 8 social media sites. So that is Google My Business, that's a social media site, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Tumblr, and YouTube. Those are the top 8. Okay. Now, I had a customer who is a exercise coach. She was in college, and we started looking at it, and she wanted to do Facebook. She felt like it would do better on Facebook. But we started asking her customers where they went to online and what drove them there. And we found for exercise, and she also did some nutrition, we found that Pinterest was #1 for her. And so she just was floored because she didn't even think of Pinterest as an exercise place or a
Does she
place for
have,
nutrition.
I have to ask, did she have an older demographic?
No, actually, it's other college students. And
Oh,
so,
really?
yeah, so between 19 and 25-year-olds was her main demographic, and Pinterest was where they were going to find out more about these exercises. Now, then we also went on from there, and Facebook was in the top 5, but in fact, I think, as I remember right, Pinterest was #3 after Instagram on that one. And then YouTube was #4. So people go there to do their exercising, find out more about types of exercising they want to do. One thing I found was I was working, I'm just quoting a doctor right now. It's they're a physical therapist. And funny enough, #1 place that people go to find out more about physical therapists is YouTube. Not any of the rest, but YouTube, because
Really?
they want to see what they think about certain things. And if you haven't got any videos up there, you're probably not going to be paying. They're not going to pay as much attention to you. And even if you have just a couple of videos that are a couple years old, that's better than nothing at all on YouTube. So it's interesting what people think about those things. Now, if you don't have anything and they can't find anything from anyone else, then it defaults to the second one, which happens to be Pinterest for physical therapists. And then it goes down from there. So it's interesting when you're looking at certain businesses as to what is their perfect mix of social media. Now, don't always throw all your efforts into one. So Pinterest might be your #1, or it might be Instagram. Don't just throw everything into that. What happens when something happens to your account? Maybe it gets shut off for some reason. I had an interesting thing that happened to me this month. A few weeks ago, I got a notice from Facebook saying that I could not advertise any longer for the next 30 days. And I'm going, what? Why? Well, turns out that one of my my groups that I have, somebody's been posting in the group, and I haven't been shutting them off if they post something, but it's something that's against Facebook's rules. Well, they blame me for that being posted, not the person who posted it. They blame me because I should have been shutting it off. And so now I've got to go in and shut off my automatically you get to go in. Now you have to ask to be in before, and then I have to approve it. So that means I've got to go in and do the approval from time to time. So, but that's something you got to know about. You got to pay attention to. But what if you get shut off completely from some thing that you are doing? Whether it be Pinterest or YouTube or Facebook. There's times, like I have a customer that's up in the Layton area, and they were on Amazon, and they were competing with one of the biggest stores on Amazon. And the other store said, oh, their product is not FDA approved. Well, it took him 2 weeks before he could get it. So that they shut him off, said, oh, you're not FDA approved, you can't be in here. It took him 2 weeks to get back on there because he was FDA approved. In fact, it turned out that the company he was competing with was using an illegal part of their program. So it's talcum powder. and you're not allowed to use talcum powder any longer because it causes cancer. Well, they still were using talcum powder in that other product. And so Amazon for 2 weeks shut him off though. And he went from making about $100,000 a month to making nothing. And 2 weeks later, he had to start it back up and it had to ramp back up. So you don't want to throw all your eggs in one basket. You want to be doing multiple social media at a time. And you should also be doing one where you're getting their information so that you can then use a drip campaign or you have them as an email, because an email list, they can never take away from you. When people have signed up to an email list, that's a great thing to have. I know you work with those, Jim. What's your thoughts about email lists?
Email marketing is changing kind of radically. And there was a time where, you could send out a communication and it was a really, really predictable return. Today, about 5% of any email list is a bad domain or a bad email. So that's changing quite radically. Every month that cycles, and about 5% of that list becomes bad. So if you're going to use it for a drip campaign or an email marketing campaign, you have to, first of all, those people have to know and like you. And then you have to determine the frequency that you can communicate with them. If you communicate every other day, they're going to delete you or block you or unsubscribe from your list. I think that frequency is probably 3 times a month. So about once every 10 days is a good number. And you have to say something relevant to them. Let them know about an upcoming event. Ask them questions where they can respond to you. And then have a mechanism to see those responses. And then have that communication channel, that drip, if you will, continue down until they take the action that's required. They purchase something. Then they need to be moved from one list to a different list, because if you continue to talk to them like they're a prospective customer, it's going to offend them if they've already purchased from you. So you need to be really careful with your drip campaign and how you design it and how it reacts once they take an action for it to be effective.
I was just going to mention, one of the other things that go right along with that is once you've moved them to that other list, they become a different type of customer. Mm-hmm. They become the customer that you can offer additional things to, upgrades and other things, and instead of just simply trying to sell them the main product.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And I haven't avoided this. I got it last evening. There's a client that we both used to work with. That's a mortgage company up north. I'm not going to tell any more than that. I want to preface this and say it's not the one in Salt Lake that we're both very much aware of.
Yeah.
But I received 2 text messages from him. Was exactly the same message, 30 minutes apart. So I was on his list somehow twice, and he didn't have permission technically to market to me. And then he sent out a request for, hey, do you need a mortgage? I'm available. I've got time. And it was a really weird message. It came at a really weird time. And then it repeated itself a half hour later. So that company technically violated even the ICANN spam act, and was sending out text messages, which is a fairly fine if you get caught doing that. And so I sent him an email and let him know that there was some shenanigans going on. He told me he had hired a new marketing company, and clearly this marketing company wasn't following what is all pretty standardized rules. So I thought we'd be interested in hearing that. It came from a legitimate company, and I know that, we both know the guy, but it was really violating a lot of protocols.
Yeah, so you got to be careful and invite your customers to join an email list and let them sign in and say, yes, I want this. That makes it the best way possible. Don't buy a list or take an old list that you had that you've not used for years. Get it something fresh and now on an old list, you can send to them once and say, hey, you used to follow me. I'd like you to continue following me. Would you like to do that? And have them opt in, and it'll put them into the list of that's good to go. If they don't respond, drop them off.
Mhm. That's a great bit of advice. The other thing is that you should be requesting of all your customers that they actually follow you or let you market to them, and then be harvesting those emails or those phone numbers. Like I said, if you have a good productive list, then certainly you want to use email marketing, send out offers, do that with some frequency. The difference between an email list and a text message is the open rates are radically different. Boyd and I have a client that we've been talking about, and I think he had an open rate of about 3% on a campaign that he ran before we got involved, of course. And we were both shocked. I mean, we run 25, 30% open rates, which is better than the industry norm. The industry norm is about 17, 18%. So we're averaging about 10 points higher than that with our open rates and our campaigns. But he got 3%, which was a miserable list. And so I asked him, I said, where did you get that list? And he said he bought it. And so it was a completely purchased list. And so that's why there was such a low open rate. Then it became very clear to us. He'd been telling me all along that, oh yeah, I've got, a list of, 12 or 1,500 people. It's a great list. And effectively they'd never really bought or purchased his product.
Or wanted to even know more about it.
Yeah, it was a cold list. So, and he's got a compelling product. It was just a surprise to me when I got in and started to dig through that's what it really looked like. We're strategizing and putting a campaign together for him, and I think it'll be a lot more effective with the demographic that we're going after.
Right. Now, one other thing that I want to mention, and it's up here on the screen, on our screen, says regarding your products or services, what do they love to read about or watch videos about that you can provide? This is one way that you can become the expert in the field. If you write content, articles, and if you use mini blogs on your social media and major major blogs or regular blogs on your website, and then you use social media to push people to it, it really helps. Mini blogs are really great for, it's 300-500 words or so. If you're going above that, go to a full blog and put something together that's 1,000 words, or maybe it's only 900, but you're going to get more business if your customers are interested in that. If they're not, then don't do it. Also, do they like to watch videos? I had a customer, and he went and talked to people, and the one thing that he got was how-to videos. And so he's creating a video every couple of days of how to use the products he sells. And he uses a household product. And even though the company puts out videos, he's doing it, and people love to watch his videos. He also does a food show to tell people how they can cook something new every week. Even though that's not what he's doing. Well, he has a few things that help out with that, but most of what his stuff is storage stuff. And so he loves to do that now. And it's done really
between the two of us, I've been really hitting Boyd up hard because I'm curious about the demographic of a TikTok user. And apparently that's changed radically. I'll let you explain in just a second. I've got clients asking me, what about TikTok? What about TikTok? It's so important. It's growing so rapidly. And Boyd clarified it for me in about one sentence when he said, it's great for entertainment. That's all it is. So it's not a great place to do business.
Well, if you're certain types of businesses, I could see that. Like I have a guy who runs a t-shirt shop and he does very well with it. In fact, he does very well with it. I have a lady who does clothing for women. She does very well, but they both put together some clever things and they're pushing it online and it's doing well. I know that there's an exercise person who's doing okay with it. She's doing just as much, actually, probably more on Instagram in Reels than she is in TikTok, but she's gotten tons of followers. So there's a dentist that I was talking to a few days ago. No, they're not my customer. I called because they are someone I see on TikTok, because I do follow TikTok to see when it will be right for what type of business. And this dentist was doing it. Well, it was her hygienist that was doing it. And I called her and I says, so how is this working for you? And she says, we have over 100,000 followers. I says, great. So how much business have you gotten from it? And she just kind of got sheepish. She says, we've yet to have a single person walk in. So, I mean, they're being clever about teaching people about, why do you need to have your teeth cleaned? Come and get your, the x-rays done by us, and they're doing some clever things to attract attention, which gets them followers, but it's not getting them the business that follows with that. And so that's the problem with TikTok, because it's new. You got to be clever. You got to be funny. You got to do something out of the ordinary. There's people on there that tell jokes. Okay, good. They teach dance moves. And they get lots of people following them. But what good is it if you're not getting business from it for a business to be doing it? There's a car dealership that was on there doing it, and they've stopped doing anything. And so I reached out to the ad agency and they said, yeah, they insisted that we did this, but we didn't see any return on it either, even though we were doing the clever things that we needed to. And just there's certain things some things are better for it. You don't go and talk about teeth whitening or getting your teeth done on LinkedIn. It's, while everybody on it may need it, you're not going to get the attention there, because that's more business oriented. And that's the same thing with TikTok. You got to know who the customers are that you're going to get. Now, it's interesting to note that there's more and more people jumping on TikTok, and TikTok is not just for the kids. The age has gone up as to what the average age is. And there's senior citizens on it, and there's high school students. In fact, middle school students on there, and everything in between. And so the age keeps moving up, and about every 6 or 8 months, it goes up a little more. The average age of who's on TikTok, but it's still not translating into anything else. Other
than entertainment. I mean, you
entertainment, yeah.
You absolutely clarified that.
Yes. So yep.
Relatively speaking, we've got a client that sells supplements, and when I say we, it's both Boyd and I. We're targeting a demographic for them. What kind of response rates are you expecting with the video ads that we're throwing out there?
It's going to depend. We're going after a very specific market, because the things that they have work really well for some people, but it's very, very narrow. It's not everybody needs it. So that's something we have to go to their customers and ask them about. And in fact, I got to talk to them about that, because they need to be asking their customers, how can we get to you? And
where I was going with it was a little bit of A/B testing, maybe.
Yes, and A/B testing is a great thing, and sometimes even doing more than just A/B. Maybe it's an ABCD, but you don't run them all at the same time. You run 2 at a time, A and B. Otherwise, it gets confusing, and you start pulling in people in different directions if they're seeing it in multiple places. So A/B testing is good, and you should use it. You always start with a small testing, and then once you figured that out, which one has the better draw, then you expand it a little bit, make sure the draw follows what your A/B testing proved out to be. And then you can scale it up. It's like a faucet at that point. You can turn it up, you can turn it down, depending on what you need.
Perfect, perfect. Well, that's great advice that you need to understand your clients. You need to
Yeah.
let them drive the bus to a large extent and tell you what your most viable or your minimal viable product should be, and then expand out from there and do some A/B testing, get to know them, ask them where they hang out online. And you and I have both taught this several places, but it's like a big funnel. And
It
so
is.
effectively, if you can introduce yourself to a lot of people on social media or online, you're going to have more people that fall into the conversion package at the bottom of that funnel. And it's just a math problem. The more people you talk to on the top of the funnel, generally speaking, more people pass through the funnel and buy.
Yeah, that is a very good thing to do. You got to make sure you have a funnel that you have in mind. I think when I first started this, I said, you need to understand what you want the customers to do. And that may be to go to a certain place of your website. Maybe it's to come into your store. Maybe it's to watch a certain video. These are all things you got to know and find out that from your customers. What's the best thing that the customer wants, so that the prospects will do the same thing that the customers did. And they'll come to you for that unique value proposition, that you use the unique value or sales proposition to get them there. So that's what you need to do. You need to talk to your customers so you'll know how to talk to your prospects.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. So,
well, it was excellent from on your end too. So thank you today for the hanging out with us. I hope this was helpful to you. And if you're watching this after the fact, we hope you can come and see some of our live trainings. We do this every Tuesday, and so we hope to see you soon.
It's from 2:15 to 3:15.
Yep.
And we generally at 3 o'clock. But come visit us. It's every Tuesday, as Boyd said. And we also have podcasts that we do 3 times a week.
Yep.
Those are released roughly 10 o'clock in the morning on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And they're also very much about business. During the training sessions like we just had, we get to do a little bit deeper dive than we do in a 15 or 20-minute podcast. But we always have compelling guests on the podcast, business people or new business people, and we're asking about what they learned or how they got to where they are. So those are all really compelling. You can find those on Entrepreneur Factory podcasts. This you can find the seminar, the weekly seminar, at bpmedia.com/seminars.
Yes.
Correctly.
Yep,
So
that's it.
You can register for those,
and we do have conferences between now and Thanksgiving. We have 4 conferences. You might be listening to this, and one of them or 2 of them may already have been passed. But check those out also on the seminars tab of bpmedia.com. So you can get there and find out all kinds of free stuff that you can get into, or there's workshops and courses that we do as well. Thank you.
Everyone have a good day.